What is going on, guys? Welcome to Sixers Digest. My name is Barnard. We are in the midst of the NBA offseason. The basketballs have stopped being dribbled. We are in the hot take season, the talk about, and the Sixers are at the epicenter of it once again. And right at the top of the list of that is James Harden. Now, we know a lot about the James Harden situation. This has been an ongoing topic of conversation about his future of the team throughout the whole season, but he has dug his heels in the corner. He has opted into his player option. His desire is to play for the Los Angeles Clippers next year. He needs the Sixers' help to trade him and make that happen, but that really is not the most difficult situation. So I'm ready to dive into the latest reports on it, talk a little bit about the situation, how we got here, and how I think things will go from here. So let's get right into it and talk about what the Sixers can do with James Harden. So for starters, let's talk about how we got here. We know the James Harden situation coming back to trading Ben Simmons for him when he forced his way out of Brooklyn, when Ben Simmons was in the middle of that holdout. We're now seeing the fluff reports of Ben Simmons trying to rebuild up his image. Not sure how that's going to go. We need to see him step back on a basketball court for me to hold any weight in the beliefs of him returning as a player. But for James Harden specifically, he was absolutely the prize of the James Harden swap. Regardless of your feelings of Harden as a player, you cannot argue that having James Harden these past 2 years has given the Sixers a better chance at a championship than Ben Simmons would have. So you can look at Daryl Morey and it be a victory in that regard. But the bottom line is they have not made it past the second round still. It has not progressed their progress toward getting that championship, and James Harden has to wear some of that as well. For his play specifically, overall, it's been very good. Let's take a look at his stats from this season. 21 points per game, 6.1 rebounds, 10.7 assists, 1.2 steals. That 38.5% three-point percentage is the second highest of his career. Touched a number that he has not done in nearly a decade. He was very good this year, James Harden. Now, yes, he was very good, but he was not the level of he is so good that we have to throw all the money in the world at him and ensure that he is back in there. He was not that guy. Now, I can put on my James Harden lenses right now, look at the situation from his perspective, and understand why he feels a little bit slighted here, that he did take a pay cut last season to sacrifice the money to bring in PJ Tucker, to bring in Daniel House, to bring in his guys and make this the Rockets of the East Coast, which the Sixers have kind of become, and even leaned further into that spot by bringing in Patrick Beverley in this offseason. But to take that pay cut, to bring in his guys, and then the expectation, whether it was written, whether it was said, unsaid, handshake deal, however you want to put it, the bottom line was the expectation was there would be a long-term agreement from the Sixers and James Harden for this offseason. I don't know if feelings changed on his end, whatever. If Daryl Morey looked at it, said you are no longer worth a max contract, which is an accurate assessment of the situation, by the way, for 33-year-old James Harden. But the bottom line is James Harden was offended, and this led for him to opting out. So he dropped this report right up at the deadline of when he had to opt into his player contract, and he decided that he will opt in for the $35.6 million and work with the Sixers for a trade for the Clippers. Now, the issue with that is we know Daryl Morey's position, that he is not going to take a loss on a trade. This is why that he has been the highly regarded general manager and front office personnel that he has throughout the past couple decades, is he's a guy that does not take these things lightning. And we firsthand in Philadelphia watched him play hardball with Ben Simmons, of him refusing to give in to any trades unless he got the market value that he perceives him at. I don't expect a different mindset with this James Harden situation, especially because you look down the Sixers list of assets, you look at their future, and it is pretty bleak. There are not some draft picks that you can be tossing in to sweeten up a deal. There aren't these up and young coming players. Sure, you can give me some hype up about Maxey continuing to improve. I absolutely believe that. B-Ball Paul, happy that he is back. Jaden Springer has shown some signs of promise. Terkavian Smith, I love. But none of these guys are still the caliber of bringing you over that championship edge and taking you to the another level that the organization so desperately needs. So this really is Daryl Morey's move of getting this trade right. Now, why that there is no progress on this deal, that circles back to the report from Kyle Neubeck today. And, of course, Kyle Neubeck from the Philly Voice, and this is his report here saying that even the Clippers, Harden's preferred destination, has been fairly quiet, fairly unserious about what they're willing to give up in order to acquire him. The prevailing sentiment seems to be that Harden is still valued, but on the team's terms, which is a shift from the franchise-defining clout Harden had at his peak. Awesome stuff from Kyle as usual, and this should be a wake-up call to James Harden. I think this season as a whole, and once again, don't get me wrong, he was good this year, but the signs of regression are absolutely there. You can see the way he can't explode past guys. You can see his numbers at the rim decreasing drastically as far as his finishing, his ability there, and that's why he doesn't have it. You even look at the correlation of when he has extra rest, how much better he is as a basketball player. But the problem is you have to play every other night in the playoffs if you're going to win. That is how the NBA works. So We see it when he gets these extra breaks that he can look great. And even the nights when he looks awesome, they're not to turn back the clock. He's got to burst again. He just makes tough shots. You go back and watch that 45-point performance in Game 1 against the Celtics. It wasn't like he was creating this unreal separation in his step-back threes. Even look at that game winner against Al Horford. Al Horford guarded that perfectly. James Harden just made the shot. So, yes, he's good enough that he can make some tough shots at time, but it's not like I see any signs of him getting better. I personally was even skeptical that he could even turn back the clock as much as he did last year. I do think there was some truth to the hamstring lingering, the hamstring issues lingering when he first got to Philadelphia. They did not seem to be as serious this year, and I was happy to see that. There were some signs of progress, but it's not getting any better. He's not getting any younger. He is not the guy known to take care of himself, take care of his body, so I don't expect that. And James Harden has also made it clear that he's kind of digging into his bag of tricks of forcing his way out. We've seen him do this at a number of locations. We just saw him miss Joel Embiid's wedding, be eating burgers in the club. We also saw him throw on his story that he's been comfortable for so long. It's time for him to get uncomfortable. Do we know exactly what that means? Maybe it means he's going to try playing some defense this year if we want to look at it optimistically. But in reality, I think this means that he is going to find his way to Los Angeles by his terms one way or another. Now, I will say I'm more optimistic that James Harden does not really have that ability to dictate an organization's decisions. I don't think Daryl Morey is going to roll over in the same way that it occurred in Houston and in Brooklyn. And it should be noted that Morey did leave Houston before the trade of Harden did occur there, that Morey was already out the door there. I think Morey is going to dig his heels in there for a variety of reasons. And I'm going to start with it from the Sixers' perspective, as I mentioned, is that they absolutely have to get this right. And if you're Daryl Morey, the reports of the Clippers not even willing to include guys like Norman Powell and Terrence Mann. Like, are you kidding me? You think he's going to be willing to take a Robert Covington and Marcus Morris package for a guy who Daryl Morey probably values higher than anyone in the entire NBA? And the slap in the face to James Harden this offseason should absolutely be the lack of interest in him. Because if his feelings were that severed, and I get, like, you can opt in, you can talk about how you want to go to Clippers, how he needed the Sixers' help to get there because of salary cap restrictions, that the Clippers were unable to outright offer him a deal. He had to be traded there to fit it in under the salary cap, all those complicated rules that make it happen. I do understand that. But the bottom line is that if there was a max contract out there for James Harden on any team, he would have signed that. And there wasn't. And there was so much talk all season about the Houston Rockets, how this was his next location, that he wanted to return home, the city, the organization that he felt so welcomed in, and ride out the rest of his career. I mean, we saw reports dropping about that since Christmas. For them to go the opposite direction and give Fred VanVleet a lucrative deal, money that felt like it should be hitting James Harden's bank account, that has to be a slap in the face. And this was not just the Rockets. Even when I dig through and hop on Trade Machine and try and think about where James Harden could possibly be playing next, there's just not that many teams because he isn't this guy that you can plug and play on any roster. He has such a niche style of play in basketball, and when it's at its best, it's awesome. And when it's at its worst, it's impossible to win. So there's not that many teams that are going to be willing to take that risk. And once again, he was very good this year. So I'm not trying to act like he is this poor player. But there's just not that many fits around the NBA. And if he wants to go in and cause an uproar, I think that's very much a reason why there is such a lack of market for him, is eventually when you cause a stir at location, that sticks to your reputation. It's the same conversation that we're getting with Kyrie Irving and things like that. And I get it. Kyrie Irving did get his bag this offseason, that he did get a lucrative contract through the Mavericks. Part of that is from the Mavs not having very many outside options. And the other part of that is Kyrie Irving, at this point in his career and at James Harden's point in his career, is very clearly the better basketball player. That there's still a world where I can talk myself into Kyrie Irving being a championship winner, the second best player on a championship team. I don't feel that way about James Harden anymore, and I think he has made that clear over the past 2 years with the Sixers. And I get it, the James Harden fans that want to jump in the comments and talk about it, you can throw shade on Joel Embiid. You can talk about how Joel Embiid has not delivered. That's absolutely fair, and frankly, James Harden was better than Joel Embiid in these playoffs, and I get that. And that's not an excuse for Joel. But I also think that there is a loser energy to James Harden that Joel Embiid has not quite held up or brought in, and I'm happy about that. And that's more of the reason to get a trade done now. So if you're looking at this from James Harden, what is your next move? You can talk about wanting to be uncomfortable. You can talk about how that being your dead set. But if you show up 40 pounds overweight and not caring again, where does that put you? The market is already not jumping to add your talent. We've seen you do this twice before. And if you're going to add all this weight after a time where it took so long to get healthy from the hamstring injuries and work it off, what is another team around the NBA? So the bottom line, you're under contract with the Sixers for next season. If you play out the length of this year, and again, I don't expect James Harden to hold out. I expect him to show up to training camp. It's what level he's willing to play at or try at is really the question there. So if he dogs it for a whole nother year, you now go into free agency. You are already who you are. You have the reputation, and then to be causing an uproar again. He's turning 34 this season. He'll be turning 35 next season in the year that he's eligible to sign a free agent deal, whether it was with the Clippers, wherever. He will be a free agent this offseason. I don't see a world where a team is eyeing James Harden right now saying, I want to give you this major contract. And I think that should be the wake-up call for him. So I don't know how this resolves itself. There's still plenty more. I can say that if this is all true and this continues from the Clippers end, that they're not even willing to include the Terrence Mann, the Norman Powell, I don't expect this situation to be resolved anytime soon. This is going to be a storyline that drags out over the next couple of months unless the Clippers are willing to up their offer. I also think that there are ties to the Dame Lillard situation, that might be the first domino to fall. But the bottom line is right now we are in the middle of another staring contest between the Sixers and a point guard that has not delivered in the playoffs. We will see how it plays out from here. I personally am not ruling out the possibility of James Harden playing another game in a Sixers uniform, as he seemed clearly determined not to be the case. But the bottom line is right now we wait, and James Harden is not doing himself any favors by trying to accelerate things. And until the Clippers change their price, Daryl Morey's going to keep staring back. So I will be continuing to break this down and go through the cycle of this media circus and the various reports that will come out right here on Sixers Digest. I appreciate you guys for tuning in, and we will talk next time. Peace.